Hi everyone, Kristina here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be creating a card and envelope featuring these stamps from Picket Fence. So I really love these poppies. I thought they were really beautiful, and then that inspired me to create a red envelope. So like I said before, I'm using this Picket Fence stamp set. This is the Poppy Blossom stamp set. I'm going to be using just the really large image with the 5 blossoms and the stems. And this card is going to be 5 by 7. Now, when I was planning out this card, I thought it would be really beautiful to have the flowers stamped and embossed in gold embossing powder, and then have a gold frame around the stems of flowers. So I'm actually measuring off 3/4 of an inch from each edge and then penciling on a line. This is just going to be where the eventual gold line will be. And I did that so I could get the flowers positioned just perfectly on the paper while I stamp them. So I'm using some Arches cold pressed watercolor paper, and I've prepped that area with an anti-static powder tool because, like I mentioned before, I am going to be doing some gold embossing. So I'm placing my stamp in the center of that border area, and then I'm going to actually stamp this image twice. And I'm doing that for a few different reasons. For the main reason is that this watercolor paper is very textured, and I want to make sure I get a really, really good impression. And my second reason is that this stamp is really big. As you can see, I'm walking my fingertips over that entire area of the stamp. I just really wanted to make sure I got a really good impression. So after I stamped, I put on some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. This is a nice gold color, and I'm making sure that I sprinkle on enough to cover the entire floral area. I'll just tap off the excess. Then I used a heat tool to heat set this until it was smooth and melted, and I want to make sure that I melt this just enough to get it so that it's shiny. I don't want to melt it any farther than that because then it could actually soak into the watercolor paper. So for the border around the outside edge, I had a couple different options. I thought about maybe painting it on, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try a Versamarker. I've had a Versamarker in my stash for a long time, but I've never had really good results when I try to write with it. So I thought, what about just drawing a border? And I could go over that border 2 or 3 times to make sure it's a really solid line. And this worked out so well. I really think I'm going to be using this trick more in the future because I really like how it looks, and it makes sure that that border matches the lines on the stamped image. I think it's kind of a really fun technique, and I don't know why I've never thought about using a Versamarker like this until now. So I did each of the 4 sides of the border, and I embossed after each line just to make sure that I had enough time to get that embossing powder on the line of Versamark before moving on. So I really love how that turned out. It looks really, really beautiful. So now I'm going to take my watercolor paper and tape it down to a board using some blue painter's tape. And this is so that as I paint it, that when it dries flat. I'm using my Magella Mission Gold watercolors today. I've been using these a lot recently because it's my favorite. And I'm going to really briefly walk you through my process of painting these flowers. I thought they turned out really beautiful, and you might wonder how I got from point A to point B. So I first did a layer of a very pale yellow, and then for each one of these flowers, I first wet the entire flower with water, and then I dropped in color at mostly the base of the flower, or right at the line where the petals change. So I'm putting in like a nice red shade right now, and I'm going to use this red shade on all of these flowers.